Nomad.
I have not streamed in a long time, and OBS changed and everything, so I've just been trying to really figure that stuff out and getting that all together. Just be streaming for a little bit and just have some fun, I guess, and just chill. Booyakasha. Alright, I'll start to get to coloring on this stuff and just kind of see where it goes. Where it goes, nobody knows. flying solo right now, but I don't mind. It's fine by me. It's what I'd be doing normally anyways. Color hold. And I tend to do that so that way I can color on the inks without having to get rid of them or anything. And it's separate from everything else. Because we're smoky, that's the color I'm going to do there for the inks, so that way black holding line is good, but sometimes it's helpful to have a little bit of color on the line. There we go. And then it looks like I also need, I haven't done these yet. Just for posterity, I am using music that has been approved for stream. This has been approved for stream by Game Chops, and I have included a call to their page and a link to their YouTube from which I am streaming from. I don't know if that's changed, but last I heard, you definitely needed approval to have any sort of music. And all this stuff is approved for fair use. So it's all video game music anyways. shadow in there. I think what I'm going to do is just make that all dark to let this claw pop out a little bit better. Because I think it's kind of... it's color on color of the same colors. So I want this to come out just a little bit more. The ink does a pretty good job of it, but... And, right. Time for some rust. Rust on this hulking beast. He's been half buried in this bank on the side of a lake, which is frozen over. And he's been there for probably a couple hundred years without moving. So rust has accumulated on him, and when hawk and boar make their way into a temporary shelter for the night, they end up awakening this guardian, this Goliath unit. And it's like this big cyclops. Okay, let's see what else. Do some of the smoke. Oh, you know what? That's probably what I want to do. Some smoke. Smoke layer. And hopefully I can figure out how to get this to just stay up on my Twitch instead of disappearing after a certain amount of time. Because I'm going to be streaming during the day, and I know, you know, a lot of people are probably at work and stuff, or have other things going on during the day. Which, this is my day job. I make comics. But hopefully leave these up, so that way if people want to come back and look through them, and hopefully I'll even start uploading them to YouTube and stuff. And just really, I guess I've just been trying to figure out like what the goal is, because like I don't know, like a lot of people are, you know, they have different reasons for pursuing streaming and social media and stuff like that, and hopefully just doing this just kind of give a little glimpse into the background of one of my passion projects for people who are interested. And then, you know, maybe some people who have never seen it before get to take a look and think like, oh, sweet, you know, what is this? And check it out and give it a chance. And various lights. And I think I want to add a little bit of this onto his armor. A little bit of a glow here. See how that looks. Looks pretty cool. Breaching the line. Go in, add some tree shadows. Probably could have done these, thinking back, I probably could have done this with like a ink wash back here and it probably would have looked pretty cool. There's some stuff that I like to leave for digital when I come back to it. So and this just kind of makes it look like there's trees farther out in the background. Vying for sunlight. Okay. Go to our details layer. So, some people, when they color and paint in Photoshop, they like to work in layers. Some people work just in one flat layer. I try to keep it a little organized, especially working on comics. So I have many pages, and for the most part, I try to keep them about the same in structure. So starting from the bottom up, let's just go and make everything invisible, just because I think this will be a cool visual to see. So, the first thing that I do is I ink. So these are traditionally done with a brush, and I stream these over on Instagram when I think about doing it. And you can see here that it's not perfectly black, and that's intentional. I like having a little bit of texture there, and it lets some of the colors show through from underneath. You can see it in these quills here in his cape. And when you're zoomed out, when it's just a regular comic page, it cleans up. It doesn't look as messy as it does when you're all zoomed in. And nobody's going to notice it. It's going to be even smaller when it prints in a comic book. So the first thing I do is I ink it, and then I scan it, and I bring it into Photoshop, and I digitally, using the rectangle tool, create the panels. And the reason why I do this is because while I like the ink having variation, I want my panels to be clean. So there's a little bit of chopping, a little bit of cleanup, a little bit of everything that happens here. But the panels are the first digital step. Then I get the page flatted. And so this page was flatted by Alex Ortiz. And this part takes a little bit of time and generally is done with, you know, the lasso tool, selecting areas, and then filling them with just flat color. And that's just to give the basis for everything. There's a little bit of a gradient here that was me on accident, because the next step that I do is I start laying in gradients, and I'll do things like glow, a little bit of a glow effect, generally to break up the background. So in this panel in particular, there is quite a heavy use of gradient, and that's to kind of draw the attention at this like horizontal slice, or I don't know, kind of 45-degree angle that I have going on in the panel. And then from there I start to paint my details. And so this is all my texture, this is my lighting. Sometimes I use gradients for lighting, but in Nomads in particular, I'm going for more of a painted look. And I'll add things like in the background, kind of a more painted style background, similar to Saga. Saga's one. Saga looks like it's all digital. I don't know for sure, but it looks digital. At least the backgrounds are. And then I'll do things like color my line work with color holds. And then I'll add effects like smoke and glows. For instance, all the snow in this panel. And I generally like to have that on top of my inks. That helps kind of break it up a little bit. You can, it actually feels like it's in front of the characters. You can do this traditionally. And I tend to use whiteout if I do it traditionally. I use like a whiteout pen. Some people do acrylic, white acrylic paint, and they'll do that stuff. An example of like the color line hold is here. So my inks are black in the drawing, but I wanted to have this arrow kind of like glowing as it gets shot out of this bow, like a laser beam. And so that's just kind of the breakdown of how I set up my layers. Pretty simple. Seems kind of complex, but it's very simple. It's not just like a bunch of layers of different paint, and I don't separate the backgrounds and the characters too much. That's all kind of on one layer. Like in this, you can see the lighting. Yeah. So on to this panel. I got my trees painted in. And I guess I'll just start with doing the lighting on Hawk. And sometimes I'll paint one thing at a time. Other times I'll do, you know, sometimes I'll paint one hawk all the way to completion. In this instance, because it's all in the same panel and I'm just using the same color rather than going back and forth and selecting the color over and over again, I'm just going to go through and everywhere where I need the color, I'm going to paint it first. Let's do a little bit more there. And then I'll do my high tone. So the other thing too I like to do, and it's kind of like what they did with like pixel art and what they do with cell shading, is I do like three levels of lighting. I'll do like a high tone, which is what I'm doing right now, which is like your lightest. Then I'll do a mid tone, and then the dark tone, the flattest tone, is generally what I use for my flats, and I just paint on top of it. To this red tone, and in this instance, because the material, so like if you're working on something that's metal, there tends to be a lot more light reflecting, so you're going to get more color variation. I guess just in my own kind of head canon for the color on this. So the robot has deeper shadows and higher highlights because he's made out of metal, but like something like this leather doesn't really reflect light. It's not like polished up very high, so I'm only doing 2 tones of color, and I'm just doing like a, not quite a highlight tone, but like in between a high and a mid tone in my mind. And same thing with the scarf and gloves. They're kind of like a soft material. The other time that I only do 2 tones is when something is far away as well, because it's like there's no point in adding excessive detail to something that's far away, and we don't tend to see that level of detail from far away either. It's just not natural. Though sometimes, like working digitally, it's tempting because we can zoom in really close, so it's very tempting to like do lots of detail. But the reality is, when you zoom out, what are you gonna see? Work on Hawk's mask. He's only going to have 2 tone there. Maybe I'll do a 3rd tone here. A higher tone. Yeah. To really just kind of accentuate his brow there. He's jumping. Now the beak I did reversed. I did a mid tone for the flat. And then I have a shadow. That's all I'm going to do for that. The bow, very simple. Those are kind of like glass bulbs. So Hawk is pretty much colored. Just before I forget, what I'm going to do is add a little glow trail on his bow. It's kind of a fun effect that helps you show movement. Do some sparks coming out of here too. Just for fun. So saturated. He's dropping sparks. And then we'll do the robot. And this time I'm going to start with the darker shadows on this. Deeps. Do a mid-tone. You know, I tend to work kind of zoomed out. Occasionally I'll zoom in and I'll do up close, but for the most part I like to keep it kind of in perspective, work kind of far out, and then that way, you know, I can kind of get a better glimpse of what it's going to look like when it's reduced and printed. Some more of that in there, and it really starts to come together when you start getting some of those higher tones in there, at least in my opinion. It's usually like at about this point where I start feeling better about it. There's always like that feeling like, oh man, like this looks like crap, I don't like this. That weird sort of self-conscious thing that I think a lot of creatives deal with. And it's not until about this phase where I start feeling like, oh, okay, like this is starting to look good. Like, or it's starting to look the way I want it, I should say. Because good is subjective. Sometimes I think the goal is to get it to look how it looked in your head sometimes. Other times it's just like, hey, you know, it's not going to match the idea I had in my head, but I can at least try to get it to a certain level of quality, you know. But I'm feeling like this is kind of getting to that, this page is starting to get to that point. So now we're moving on to the rust again. One of the fun little accents of this guy. That really helps kind of help break him up a little bit because he is all one color. He's not his different parts visually don't have a lot of variation. But that's kind of what I wanted. He's like just this colorless, old, hulking machine. Just thought of. See, he has 2 holes blasted through. And I did not include that on his back. So, what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to use the smoke layer. Visually, just kind of paint on top of everything. Maybe go a little bit darker. And so we're going to have a little bit of fun with this. Some wires and stuff in there, like you can kind of see some of his insides, and then start adding a little bit more. And for this, I'm gonna just kind of draw some of that. I don't know what's going on with this music right now. It's like some Pokemon music or something. I'll roll with it. So, I want this to, let's do hard light. Glow a little bit. Then shooting sparks, 'cause that's what he's doing. Do a little bit lighter. Really make it look neon. And again, once you're zoomed out on the page, that little bit of detail will suffice. Okay, so that stuff's all colored. I'm gonna do a little bit of detail on the cliff behind Hawk. Because really, you know, the backgrounds are important, but what I want people to look at is the action, is what's happening with Hawk and like this robot he's fighting. But just adding a little bit of texture really goes a long way, I think. Especially it's snow. It doesn't. I'm not gonna go crazy on it. Now, because this is all in the same layer, I have to this is where you have to, you know, kind of watch your edges. I could do a selection by using the flat layer to keep me all on the lines, but I'm only going to be doing a little bit here. Then moving on. And then, you know what? What do I want to do? I want to do a little bit more glow, but here. On his mitts that he's got going on. A little bit there. Let's make his mitts glow. A little bit better, and then let's get a little bit different glow going on there. All right, sweet. I'm almost out of coffee and almost been streaming for an hour, and that's probably going to be the cutoff point. But I think I can wrap this page up in 9 minutes. Because the last thing I want to do is add the snow. So, for this part, I'm going to use selections. And what I like to do first, for some of this, not all of it, is I have a snow brush that I've been using. And that just gives me a general pattern. It big, and then make sure it's at 100. Oh, I gave it blue snow. There we go. Alright, so the first thing I do is I lay that in. Oof, that brush is huge right now. And then switch to an eraser, because I don't want all of it here. I just kind of want it for the background. And I'm going to just softly erase around where the action is. So the whole idea is to create layers with this. And then what I'm going to do is go back in with a solid brush, and I'm going to add my own little snowflakes. Now, he's smashing his giant gauntlet into the ice, so it's breaking. So maybe I'll do something that look like some of the snow is just like flying away. Add a little bit to that impact. Yeah. Let's keep it small. Alright, so that, I would say the snow for that panel is done. This next one, because I'm focusing on Hawk, yo, what is up? Hello, someone named Sean. What's up, Sean? I've just been talking to myself for an hour. But I figured that would happen with a day stream. And then for that panel, no snow, because I just want that to be the focus. And this one. What do you think? You know what? I am gonna go back to this guy. Add some snow there. And then add some solid stuff. And snow on the last panel, and that'll be it for this page as far as colors go. Oops. Let's actually change up that brush. Let's do 13. Gotta find the right pattern. Some of them are huge, humongous patterns. That one's pretty cool. Oh, that'll be fun. I know this looks like a mess on stream probably. And then let's get some of this out of the way. Some of it's cool. But oh, and then I gotta do his action trail. There we go. Let's deselect. Some white. Whoa. And last little detail I think I want to do is a sound effect. Boom. And that's a wrap. It's been an hour. Happy to get this working again. Maybe eventually I will get a proper mic. But I've been saying that for like 3 years now. So we'll see what happens. I hope if you come back and you're watching this, you enjoyed it. I had fun. I'm going to do it again, and then I'm going to get this put up on YouTube and all that other stuff. So hopefully, you know, if someone's out there and they want to see the coloring process, there's a million videos on it. You know, what's one more? But this is just how I do it. So maybe it's a little bit different, and maybe it's helpful. But alright, folks. The 1 or 2 people who stopped by, I appreciate you. You're the best. And if you watch this, you're also the best. So, yeah. Take care. I'm going to try something. Okay, well, we'll see what happens. Bye.